Welcome back, everybody. I would like to introduce you today, Raja Musunuru, our good friend from Accelerants here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Raja is the CPO at Tiffin, has a 25-year astounding background across a number of organizations in the IT space, such as Tiffin, of course, AAA, Sony, Amicus, Gaylord Entertainment. And I think what we're going to talk about today is his experience in leading technology organizations and where particularly right now he's driving AI-powered innovation in the product development space. It's very interesting. He's got a very unique blend of technical and management skills with product vision, and he's very passionate about this. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we were very fortunate to have Raja join us at the first Accelerants Roundtable dinner here in Charlotte, and it was wonderful to have that insight on the floor with all the other guests, and very much enjoy the interaction. So what I'm hoping today is again, to a wider audience, we can talk about some of those great things. So today we're going to hear from Raja about how AI is reshaping product development, right in the forefront of it, what it's doing with engineering talent and global delivery models, and really what that means for leaders like us and you to navigate the area.
And I'm Tomas Hilliard here, Director of Strategy and Consulting at Accelerants, co-hosting with Rich. As he mentioned, today's focus is AI's disruption in product development, talent, and strategy. Raja, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both. All that really means, Rich, is I'm really old.
Well, you and me too. But that's okay, because with age comes wisdom, Roger, and we know that. And all these young people need to learn that, right? So, however, it's accelerating a lot faster with this AI thing. So on that note, Raja, again, it's awesome to have you here with us. And if I can jump really into the first bit of the discussion, just to kick it off with that history piece, you've been part. I mean, I've worked with you before. We had a partner working with you in Brazil,
yes.
And for various reasons, and we'll talk about that kind of impact later. That moved on and changed, not because of the partner, but just because of the circumstance. So, in your roles, your leadership roles in these organizations, some very large Fortune 500 companies, some very important niche players in particular industries. I mean, I never knew what a donor-assisted fund was until I met you. You've really had an amazing sort of career history. So I'm wondering if you can share, just to kick things off, sort of a career-defining moment, be it recently or a long time ago that impacts now, in your experience, about how that actually affects how you think about product management and product leadership today.
Absolutely. I think there are many actually along the way in my journey of learning over the years, but I'll pick one I think that may be more relevant for today's conversation. Back when I was in Nashville, Tennessee, working for Gaylord Hotels, Gaylord Entertainment, around 2010, this was 2 months after I joined, Nashville had a historic flood that essentially took our flagship property, Gaylord Opryland, and the famed historic Grand Ole Opry, the birthplace of the country music, underwater, unfortunately. That actually meant that we had to think on the fly, starting with how do you evacuate guests safely, take care of our fellow employees who are servicing those guests at the hotel that night, on the weekend to the next few days and weeks where we had our call center that was servicing our entire brand went underwater. How do you resurrect that contact center in a matter of hours and days? How do you then start the recovery, restoration, rebuild efforts? That brings, when you go through a crisis like that, you actually have, you'll hone the ability to bring into stark focus what is important to survive and to live the next day, and what do you do that day to continue the business forward. That brings this extreme focus. To me, I think that was a big lesson, living through those 6 months after that flood, rebuilding the property, reopening, all that taught me an important lesson, which is what problem are you solving that you need to solve the business forward to serve the customers, to serve the business, as opposed to living in this quarterly, yearly plans, right? Because those change all the time. And you can only imagine with technology acceleration and the technology shifts, with AI now, even prior to that, with mobile, social, all of that, web technologies prior to that. Each of these waves are bringing a level of change and uncertainty at unprecedented magnitude and at a pace that is not seen before. To me, I think if I go back almost 15 years now, I think that was a big defining moment in my career of prioritizing around what is really important and what can wait. Right. There were a bunch of projects until that flood hit that we were planning to do. Some of those we had to accelerate and get done in a matter of weeks and days. Some of those we had to defer for the next year until we recovered from that. Right. So I think that was the defining moment in how do you radically prioritize things. That I think served me very well later when I joined smaller companies like Amicus.io, and obviously now at Tiffin, where we practice that at a scale that I've not done before.
You told me when you joined Tiffin that you used to change jobs every quarter.
Yeah, so we think of at Tiffin as every quarter as a what are we executing for that quarter for the business, and it's like a tour of duty. Um, right. So what's the tour of duty I am signing up for this quarter? And what do I need to do to execute that tour of duty very well? And you're hyper focused on that and nothing else.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Raj, I'm curious with your prioritization of the different, shiny objects or features that you can add to your product suite. How do you go about that prioritization? As you mentioned, AI, has sped up the acceleration of potentially being able to develop more features now. And so how do you really hone in on what matters to your customers and what you need to build in the immediate?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So when everything seems to be easier, faster to be able to do, why not build 10 different features, right? So I think as a product leader or as a business owner, you have to be able to think about what's the North Star for your business and the product. What problem are you ultimately trying to solve better than anybody else in the market? What will keep that differentiation for you going? How can you extend that differentiation? And it's more, a lot of times it's about that focus to say, what are the handful of things you need to do really well with excellence that nobody else is able to do, rather than adding hundreds of features? Then you're not pleasing anybody. You're actually creating a lot of bloat that slows you down in terms of your development and delivery efforts. So it's all about pruning and doing things with excellence as opposed to adding a lot of features. That's always been the guiding principle. In fact, our founder, Dr. Vinay Nair, he had this one operating principle, which is the speed of learning, right? So we only have one operating principle, core value around that he organized the company around, which is how quickly can we deliver magic to our customers and learn from that, the feedback from what is the feedback loop, how quickly are we learning, how quickly are we making decisions, and how quickly are we learning from those decisions. I think those are the only things that we focus on.
Based on that answer, I would be curious to learn a little more about how you actually implement some of that user feedback in your product development lifecycle.
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, it's a mixture of two things, actually. One is we are often building some things that doesn't exist in the market. So you have to kind of take it a feature forward approach of saying, what is it that doesn't exist that we want to create unique experience that comes from our internal visioning and strategy exercise. The second is, as we put those in front of early adopters, then we are getting signals and feedback on what makes sense, what doesn't. That's how we refine it. So we take both top down and bottom up approach to be able to do that. That doesn't mean we take the feedback exclusive from the clients and only work on those. It's more of a validation of learning than anything else. Otherwise, most of the what we want to build and deliver for our customers is internal driven.
So I'm curious. You definitely have a laser focus, right? And it sounds like you have a vision from the top with a laser focus. I was reading recently the Benjamin Hardy book on the science of scaling. And one of the things he said is just focus on the things that actually matter. The rest is noise and try and eliminate that, right? So how many people are you working with across all these product teams at Tiffin, and how do you keep them focused?
Yeah, it's actually very lean teams, especially these days. It was always like that, very small teams, product engineering team for each product that we have in our portfolio is a very small team. Typically half a dozen to less than 10 people right? Very targeted. Uh, the whole Tiffin innovation lifecycle has been around building MVPs real quickly within 2 to 3 months, testing them, getting feedback for 6 to 9 months, and then launching at scale, right? So that's all been kind of the innovation philosophy behind what Vinay has built. So far, within the US market, we have about more than 10 products launched in various stages. In India, which is our second market now, but a couple of products already launched and growing crazy, right? So it's all rooted around what friction points are we solving for the customers in the space that we want to play in, which is the intersection of wealth management and AI and investment intelligence, right? So those three are kind of where our core competencies exist. And in that space, what problems can we uniquely solve that others are not solving?
It's really interesting you talking about the separate lean teams for each product, that Tiffin is creating. I'm curious as to how you weave a common thread throughout the different product teams to ensure that they're adopting common processes, cutting edge technologies, et cetera, and so that there's a theme or continuity across the different products that are created.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think what problems are we solving? It's all curated highly. How we are solving those problems, the design aesthetics, those are all curated. There are a lot of shared learnings that come from launching each of these products that are applied to the next one that's getting launched. But outside of that, each of these individual teams have a lot of freedom on how to execute, right? There are obviously a lot of shared learnings around operating cadences, development cadences, design cadences, delivery cadences that are applied. But otherwise, each of these teams have a lot of freedom and autonomy to execute on their mission.
Now, coming really back to the topic at hand, I mean, we can talk about evolution and incremental growth and product development, but I mean, where are you seeing disruption?
Yeah, so especially with AI, what we have been seeing in the especially last 12 to 18 months, even for us, is while we have always been about speed of execution, speed of learning, what we have seen is an order of magnitude improvement in the availability of tooling that cuts our cycle time from ideation to delivery, right? Um, we always had automation around software engineering, QA automation, CI/CD pipelines, and all that. That was always foundational for us. That's how we had speed of execution from a software delivery standpoint. But now with AI, it's taking it to the next level where our upfront from a product team standpoint, design team standpoint, we are no longer spending weeks in ideating designs and all that, right? So we are cutting that down drastically into hours and days in creating working prototypes around a feature that we want to deliver. And
Mhm.
that one is shortening that cycle time for us to get even early feedback from any core questions internally, externally we want to get. Is this how we want to build it? Is this how we want this experience to look like? We are testing that much more rapidly in a prototype without any technical team involvement, right? And a product doing that. Number one. Number two, the second is when we hand off to the engineering team to deliver, there is a working prototype that they can quickly productionize, right? There is no longer this lengthy user stories, PRDs, Jira tickets, right? It's that handoff is that much more tight now, and there is a lot of back and forth between product engineering team on what this needs to look like. There is no confusion anymore. There is absolute clarity on what is being envisioned to be built. So that's actually adding a layer of productivity improvement for us in terms of how
Mhm.
quickly we can deliver that magic to our end customers.
I kind of think, when I look back at it, maybe what's happening now is it's more that sort of business process part of the business that may have gone away in the past is actually more coming to the fore about what's possible with business, create it, prototype it, hand it over for it to be scaled and built properly, rather than the engineers saying, hey, this is what's possible, this is what we can do for you. To me, that seems to be what seems to happen in the market, right?
Absolutely. I think too often it's driven by what the engineer thinks is doable comfortably, right? So there is a lot of pragmatism built into those. That doesn't mean that doesn't exist today, and you need that pragmatism that you're accounting for the robustness and scalability that the engineers bring to the table. But their job is also that much easier now that they can visualize what's being asked to build, right? right? So they don't have to read lengthy PRDs. They don't have to look at Figma designs, right? Now there is a living, breathing prototype in front of them.
So that lost in translation is not happening as much. Is that what you're seeing
Absolutely.
from idea? Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, we'll call that disruptive.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how you bring up the different perspectives as far as from a business side of things. Our leaders are expecting more products at a quicker pace being developed. On the engineering side of things, even their perspective and involvement within the SDLC is changing. My question is how do you bring clarity and alignment when AI is changing the expectations so quickly for these different sectors of stakeholders?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are very disciplined around what we want to do for the quarter. So every quarter, we actually get cross-functional alignment across product engineering, operations, sales, marketing, everybody to say, as a business, these are the things we want to deliver and what each functional leader is accountable for that quarter. And that gets translated into a weekly plan, essentially. So we don't spend a lot of time thinking. We focus on a predefined interval at the beginning of the quarter where we say, here is what we want the quarter to look like at the end of the quarter, and what's that plan? And then we go execute, heads down, week in, week out. As we do that, every week we are learning on what's working, what's not, how well our plan is holding up to our execution. Were we too aggressive? Were we too conservative? What tweaks do we need? We do a mid-quarter check-in on that. Say, is there anything we want to tweak for the second half of the quarter to achieve the goals we said we would do for the product and the business? And then we tweak that, and then we apply another end of quarter learnings and say, what worked, what didn't, how do we use those learnings to then define the next quarter? So it's very execution driven. That eliminates a lot of noise, and there is not a lot of back and forth on what priority is important this week versus next month. None of that. That also means that you have done your homework for the quarter. You really intimately know what you need to deliver for your clients to grow the business the way you need to.
That's a great strategy. It seems like kind of getting together and making sure all stakeholders are present and represented at the beginning of the quarter allows for a focus and a direction on a North Star rather than, some of the short-term pressures jumping in mid-quarter.
Yep, absolutely.
You've pointed out earlier on, there's a bit of a disruption going on. Let's just say how we're building the product. Then you've got your quarterly model and things like that. We had an interesting conversation over coffee, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago now, where I asked you, I said to you about what was going on in India in terms of the impact of AI in the market for engineers. And you made an interesting observation about that, which no one believed me about. But I think I've seen it come true. And do you want to enlighten us on that? Can you remember what that was?
Yes, I think we were talking about the traditional software delivery model was changing rapidly and evolving. And I think we were talking about the days of some organizations operating at volume and scale, a lot of engineers, throwing a lot of engineers at the problem, where those days were going to go away, and it will shift to what we were talking about a few minutes earlier about the small but effective teams delivering high quality products at speed. I think that's how this market is evolving. I think people that are using co-pilots, coding assistants, other tooling that's available, mid-level, senior level engineers are being much more productive than when you throw 10 traditional software engineers that may or may not have that level of expertise to use those tools, right? So I think that was a big shift that I think, Rich, we were talking about a couple of years ago, and I think we are seeing that permeate across the board.
Yeah, we had one of our partners in a blog in the last week or so published something that basically said the velocity that senior engineers were achieving was phenomenal. Junior engineers were struggling with adopting AI, not adopting it per se, but understanding what they were doing with the models as well as the senior was doing. And I sort of found that fascinating because he was, this guy owns a software firm. He's saying, I don't have a problem. The challenge I've got is my juniors don't know how to interpret the output of these models as well as a senior does. Well, I would expect that, but
Yeah, absolutely. I
you
think
felt they were struggling more.
there is definitely some of that. I think it's two different things actually, right? One, the senior people who are able to adapt and learn, apply the new tools, I think they're very effective. The senior people that are stubborn in their ways of doing things, I think are going to be struggling a lot, right? On the flip side, to your point, the junior engineers, or for somebody coming fresh out of college, if they don't have exposure to the AI engineering principles, AI tool sets, I think they're finding it harder to to land on their feet. But AI natives and people that come with some exposure to AI, whether it's LLM, Gen AI side or machine learning side, some expertise in data science, those are actually thriving, right? Because they know how to use and deploy these tools, how to make themselves effective. And if they have the right mindset, that learning curve is that much faster for them. So we are seeing both sides of that.
Yeah, and are you beginning to see that coming out of educational institutions now? I mean, I know you're involved with UNC Charlotte quite heavily in helping them.
Absolutely. So we are seeing quite a bit of that. Yeah, UNC Charlotte, they're actually redefining some of the curriculum around these shifts for the College
Yeah.
of Computing and Informatics, and more news to come there in the coming months on how they're thinking about that.
Yeah,
Definitely,
no,
Dean
good.
Boyan and the team is doing a phenomenal job there, and we are seeing that quite a bit in other institutions as well, in how they are preparing young talent for the changing landscape.
I find some of these comments really interesting, Raja. It sounds like AI is taking some of these senior roles and making them, adding some superpowers, whereas at the more entry level, depending on someone's comfortability with AI, they might not be getting the most out of it. And so, as a team leader, as a product leader, I'm curious as to how this impacts the makeup of the different engineering teams that you look to deploy. Does this mean you're only investing in senior resources? Does this mean that there's still a level of investment to be made in the entry level side of things? How do you work through forming a team given the disruption that AI has brought?
Yeah, great question. I think we are doing both actually. So one is I think senior level folks are becoming more hands-on engineers, right? So that's one shift. They're doing more and more themselves. On the entry level, also, we have had a great success at Tiffin at finding the right people that are comfortable, that have done some work during their academic years as well, using some of the tooling that's available that are forward looking. And we're able to bring them in, train them, pair them up with the senior level folks so that they can pick that up quickly. We have a good internship program where we're bringing some of these folks, putting them on a three-month type engagement, and then they go finish their college and come back join us as a full time. So we have had great success being able to build a talent pipeline like that.
Very good, very good. And I think about also what you were saying before about you trying to build very small but very focused teams on particular products using all these tools that are available to give them, some kind of acceleration, I guess. Or as Tomas sort of said, superpower in terms of what they can do. It's kind of democratizing things, I guess, but you're really implying that from a startup you can do great things, whereas before, you needed a lot of knowledge, you need a lot of engineering skill, you need a lot of money to bring a team on, right?
Absolutely. I think we saw this when AWS came along initially, right? Up until then, if you had an idea that you want to build a product using technology, you had to spend a lot of capital to build your own infrastructure before you can start build the product yourself. That emergence of cloud computing, first with AWS, then later others, that changed the game quite a bit, right? You can put a credit card and provision infrastructure and platform services on demand, so you can focus on building the product. I think you're seeing the next set of that now, right? Where somebody who is maybe not even as technical, who has a great idea, can build a working MVP in a matter of days and weeks to get market validation real quick. That doesn't mean they're production ready, but that cycle of being able to quickly put an idea in front of somebody in an MVP fashion, that those barriers are going away rapidly. We're seeing, even in the Charlotte market, that local groups that I'm part of, I'm seeing that quite a bit. 1 or 2 member founding teams that are able to put as part of their pitch deck a working prototype in
Yeah.
front of potential investors. I think that means also there is a lot of now ideas in the market. That's great, a lot of abundance there. But then there is also the problem of, are you actually solving the real problem that has legs, right? So you still have that problem, right? To find
That
the
would
right
help.
product market fit, but at least the entry barriers are going away rapidly.
Yeah. You just gave me flashbacks to those pitches that people used to make where they would tell you what server, the spec of it that they were going to buy with their first $50,000 of your money that you invested.
Yes,
And you're right, it disappeared. So with that problem going, what if I'm now the entrepreneur coming along, no technical skills required? My first question is, where are you going to put your money into my idea as you can see it working? Yeah, things have changed.
yeah,
And for the better. I guess the problem is there to surmount is, of course, actually building something that is robust and scalable, right?
absolutely. It's really, I think the general purpose problems, I think while they sound good, I think they'll struggle in our opinion. I think you have to have some deep industry problem you're trying to solve or set
Yeah.
of problems for you to have that differentiation and a durable business or a product. Right. So the most general purpose issues are going to be solved by the platform players. So I think anybody else, I think you have to focus on a specific vertical.
Yep. So the hyperscaler is there. I can get everything I want now. Focus on the bit, which is probably why that whole business process piece I was mentioning before. To me, I honestly think you've got to know the business before you can do anything great
Absolutely. Yeah.
or disrupt another one.
Yeah, Rich, you were talking about the donor advised funds at the beginning of the conversation, and now Tiffin give business. That's where I'm focusing my energies these days on, right? So historically, it's a very staid business,
Yep.
very niche market, and we're trying to change that through application of AI and some unique features around community giving, tax intelligence, the features that we recently released to position that as a way for financial advisors and wealth enterprises to deepen their relationship with the clients that they're serving and use that as a growth engine to grow their book of business. Right. So it's a different take on something that has been in existence for a while, maybe in an analog world, not so tech forward. We are redefining how that experience can be both for advisors as well as the end investor and the donor.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Raja, you mentioned AI within the software development lifecycle. It seems like at this point, it's a non-negotiable for companies to begin to incorporate that into their SDLC. I'm curious on the other side of things, it's implementing AI within the products that you're creating itself. How do you differentiate amongst the many products that are coming out that use the buzzwords AI? How do you get your product to find its niche, to find the ideal client profile that you're targeting? How do you separate yourself from the noise?
Actually, we don't talk much about AI. We talk about the problem we are solving and how we are solving. If you look at any of our products, how we position them, we don't hang our hat on AI. We talk about what problem are we designed to solve and why that's better than anybody else in the market. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? The specific technology could change 6 months from now, a year from now, but that's what's durable is the problem you're solving, how effectively you're solving.
Very good. I was reading many months ago a post from Greg Eisenberg on LinkedIn just talking about the whole disruption of workflows with being able to put agents into products. You or bringing that to life with products, rather.
We are actually, so within Tiffin Give, for our own back office operations that we manage that are highly complex and regulated for the giving operations side, because it's a mix of granting money out as well as managing the investment side of the house. We're actually using quite a bit of that automation that that we can use to scale that side of the business without deploying a lot of people. Traditionally, DAF operations means big human-centric workflows, a lot of manual reviews, and we're taking a different approach to scale that.
Right. And following the same traditional process, or are you reinventing the process and the workflows as you go?
We are actually taking a digital first, automation first approach to those workflows, right? So the way we administer those programs are a lot different than what some of our competition might be doing.
Yeah. And that's going to take steps out of the workforce. It's going to take fingers off keyboards. It's going to take people making mistakes and processes out of the action, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, amazing. That's very disruptive. So, yeah.
So given what Rich just said, Raja, I'm curious as to what this means for the global talent model. Volume outsourcing seemed to be a thing of the past, but now we're really focusing in on speed and excellence. How do you go about defining what global teams are needed and what the priorities are, and then setting them up for successful processes to be able to deliver as expected?
I think it's really delivering at speed with excellence has to be the motto for anybody in the software development, AI development business, that they want to be a valued partner. They have to be able to bring that excellence as opposed to volume, right? Like you were talking about, Thomas, right? So that was the old model, right? If you're hiring a partner for outsourcing or as an augmented development partner, typically look at how many people they can bring, how quickly they can bring to my team. That I think has changed quite a bit. It's about how effectively they can solve my problem, what expertise they bring, what kind of excellence they bring, because there is a lot of proliferation of these tools. These models are evolving. Every month, somebody's releasing something new. It's a lot of noise. If I don't have the expertise in house, if I have to rely on a partner to help me guide through that, who can guide me through that quickly because they have expertise in that area, not because they have 1,000 people.
And, to that point, I had asked you also, when we met up that time, when I sort of said, I'm just curious as to what's happening in terms of if this stuff, these agents are so wonderful, co-pilots and what have you, what's it meaning to your hiring profile? And, you were saying to me that you weren't needing to hire as many people for sure. Has that sped up?
Yeah, so to be sure, we are hiring people, but not at the rate at which we are growing, right? Because we're able to do more with less, right? So because of the productivity improvements we are seeing, especially on the delivery side of the house, we're able to target our hiring to getting the right people that can do high quality work at scale that we need, right? So
Yeah. I mean, we found that issue even prior to really the emergence or even the mainstream sort of use of AI, was that a lot of customers would say they want to go offshore and hire a team, and yet when you sit down and work with them, it's kind of like we were often able to say to them, it may not actually be that many more people is going to help. It might, there may be some ways of distributing the work. And one of the things I often think about our experience when we started out working with you at Amicus, you had a team in Brazil. There was a particular reason why you went to Brazil, time zone aligned with the US, where you were, trying to work very closely on building product. And of course, when you were acquired by Tiffin with a large offshore engineering team in India, you had to move. Now, how did you make that all happen and work? Because you haven't missed a beat. That's the whole point. I just want to make here. I haven't seen any. You still have your hair, Raja.
Yeah, good question. Really, I think good point. At Amicus, I think we were focused on making sure that we have closer alignment between product and engineering being in the same time zone. We put a premium on that. That worked very well for us, and the team that he helped us find and source, actually, they have delivered high quality work for us. I think Tiffin, focuses more on, because our emphasis is so much on controlling the quality and the speed at which we execute. We tend to curate and hire the right people for the right culture fit internally. Yes, we have distributed teams. India, when we started a few years ago, pretty much most of our engineering was done out of India, whereas the product teams and rest of the teams were here. Now it has mixed, it's shifted, right? Obviously, all the products we are building for the Indian market are being done by the teams in India. We still have some India team members that are servicing and delivering the products that we are selling in the US. But we also have some small presence in Spain now. But we have found a way to do that across time zones effectively now. But I think it always comes down to, do you have the right talent that can deliver, right, with high quality?
Absolutely.
It's always been focused. And can we control that internally?
And that's often what we used to find, is that you've got to get lots of those things right first before you start putting more people at it, because the scale will only make the problem worse unless you've got the soul, I guess, of how you're working put together. So it can be very disruptive in a very unpleasant way, as opposed to in an innovative way. So that's interesting. So we have a it's been fascinating seeing all those things that you've done over the years. It's I enjoy meeting clients who they've got hard jobs, really interesting products, specialist markets, and when a customer says my business is unique, in that true sense they are. But my point being there is it's I think we live in interesting times, and what you're doing, in terms of trying to disrupt a very solid stayed market, is interesting. And what advice would you give? How do you take on a market like that? You're taking on all the large wealth advisors in the US who have nice, cushy businesses for these donor-assisted funds. How do you surmount that mountain?
I think it's a good question. There is actually a study that came out from MIT around AI adoption. They put out a report that basically said that there is a big chasm between AI pilots and AI production ready use case. And they attribute that to a couple of different things. But one thing that stood out was the companies that were working with the right partner for the expertise, that bring that expertise, were more successful, more likely to get to production state than not. The companies that were trying to do it on themselves with vendors that may or may not know their domain or industry space that they're part of were struggling to productionalize and take it past the pilot. Most of those were failing, quality, other issues, reliability type issues. And that's what our experience has been. I think we bring that predictability in that the product that is high quality for the use cases that we support, because we understand the space and we understand the tech, and we're able to marry those two together more effectively, and probably at a space and with a higher focus than an internal team could do. That's probably what's going on there. I think in the MIT study, I think that's kind of validates what we are seeing in our engagements as well.
Yep, I know you have a lot of very, very smart people working with you, so that's always a help, right?
Yep.
Very good, very good. Well, this has been really interesting, Raja. I think it's been wonderful having you here with Tomas and I this afternoon, or today, to talk about this and to share your experience. I know that people will reach out to you probably and want to connect with you on LinkedIn. Well worth doing and well worth following. So thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you everyone for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you both for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Wonderful as always.